Man, oh man, it's been like 4 whole days and I am still super pumped about the new exhaust that I got on Clifford, my turbo truck. If you haven't seen that video, go click on it, go watch it because it's super good. Spent the weekend over in Louisiana with my partner.
It's in the
Had to put some gas in it.
It's in the middle of the road, out of fuel.
Whew. Had to put gas in it. Got a full exhaust on Clifford, ready for Rocky Mountain Race Week 2.0. But today is Diggin with Diggin episode 4. My name is Diggin71 and welcome to episode 4 of Diggin with Diggin. Before we get into the topic, I want to gloss over what these episodes are. Diggin with Diggin is my series, my educational series on things that I've learned over the past 4 years with my turbo truck and taking it from an NA setup to a nitro setup to a turbo setup, and all the stuff that I've learned while wrenching on it and racing it and just in general being at the car scene, being at the drag strip. This is where you can learn those things here. For today's topic, it is all about boost, and we have a big problem with the internet and boost today, so stick around for the whole video. We're going to talk about that at the end, what that big problem is. But first and foremost, the topic specifically is what do you need to be boosted? What do you need to go with a turbo setup? We're going to ignore the supercharger stuff for now because that's pretty essential. You know, you just bolt the supercharger on and you got boost, boom, and you drive off. You know, no, it's not that easy, but we're going to ignore that side of things today and talk about turbo setups. What do you need to go turbo in your project? Car, truck, race truck, street truck, daily driver, it doesn't matter. This is a high-level glossary of what I feel like are the essentials that you need to get racing and get driving with positive pressure in a manifold. So first things first, on a previous episode of Diggin with Diggin, I have mentioned a couple of things that I felt like were essential. They were very important places that you need to spend money on if you expect a quality project car or a quality race car to come out of your efforts. It is great to do things on a budget, but if you're going to spend money in a couple of areas, those 3 are the places to do it. And those 3 places could not be more important than they are now in a turbo setup. So if you haven't watched that video, go watch it as well. I kind of feel like a broken record here telling you to go watch old videos, but it's because it's true. I'm not going to gloss over old things here. So go watch that old video and use those 3 things that I talk about there and know that you have to have them in boosted setups as well. But specifically, let's get a little more granular in the boosted stuff. What do you need? Well, kind of like 4 things. You need a turbo, you need a wastegate, you need an intercooler, and you need a blow-off valve. That's the last one's kind of debatable, but go ahead and get yourself one. You should use one. Turbo selection, I'm honestly not that picky on. They're not nearly as important as some of the other items that we're going to talk about. But turbo selection, there's a huge window of what turbo you should pick, what turbo you should buy, and it totally depends on your budget and what you plan to do with the thing. The turbo quality, in my opinion, is somewhere that you can cheap out on. I'm not advocating for you to go buy the cheapest China turbo you can buy. There are huge advantages to buying some of the more expensive American-made and manufactured ones in terms of performance, regardless of just supporting American companies. But this is all about doing more with less. It's one of the key features of this channel is doing more with less. And the turbo is an area that you can do that. You can get a VS Racing. You can get some of these other ones and get by with it in the meantime and still have pretty great results. But I can tell you that if you have a turbo LS stuff, anywhere between the VS Racing 78, 75 and all the variations of it, all the way up to like some of the larger S400, the like larger Borg Warner stuff, is going to be a sweet spot for most of you guys. There are a few there who are going to step out into the larger Pro Mod and GT55 area stuff, and then there's going to be some of you who might want to take advantage of some of the smaller stuff. But in that area, if for a single setup, turbo selection can kind of be anywhere in there, and you're going to have great results as long as you match it up to what your setup is. Like if you're drag racing, go and get yourself an S480, S485, billet wheel versions. If you're just wanting to shred tires and just make a bunch of racket, 78, 75 is going to be a great option for that too, with a million choices in between. But like I said, turbo choice, not nearly as important as some of the other items. Among those other items are what we mentioned, a wastegate, intercooler, and blow-off valve. Now the middle 2, those are the important ones in this topic. Those are the 2 that if you can, you should allow yourself to spend a little bit more money, because the rewards for them, the juice in those things is worth the squeeze. It is worth it to spend a little bit more in those two areas for safety and performance reasons. So second on the list was a wastegate. If you don't have a wastegate that works right, you can forget about ever enjoying your project, because you have one or two options with a bad wastegate. You have rods all over the road, you have Uncle Rodney knocking, you have deleted pistons, you have bad news when your wastegate sticks shut and boost goes to the moon. That is, it is not Dogecoin. We do not want boost to the moon unintentionally. We do not want boost to the moon unintentionally, but a cheap, crappy wastegate that's prone to failure is going to give you that. You're going to get boost to the moon, and it's going to be bad if you didn't pay attention to some of the other topics we talked about. So the other way that a bad wastegate can go is that you're going to have a turd. The valve's going to hang open and it's going to spool really, really slow. So if you can, spend yourself a little bit more money on a quality brand like a Tile or a Turbo Smart. I'm not saying that you can't have okay results with some of the other popular off brands. I'm just telling you that I tried 3 of them and they didn't work worth the dadgum. And by the time I threw the last one across the shop, I went and stole a really old Turbo Smart off the shelf at my buddy's shop, put it on, and have been issue free. No problems whatsoever with a kind of an old piece of junk Turbo Smart. And, that was an outdated, and it's been working far better than any of the other 3 did out of the box, or even after I put, I broke my back trying to make those things work, bent over backwards to do it, and they just never had the results that the Turbo Smart did immediately out of the gate. So piece number three in a boosted setup is going to be in the intercooler. This is the other area that you should, if possible, spend a little bit more money on. This is because cooler air is denser air. Denser air is more air. More air, more fuel, more horsepower. That's the number one thing, is that if you can have an intercooler that takes heat out of the air better, you're going to have more horsepower. Plain and simple. Regardless of anything else that you do in your setup, if you can cool the air off, you're in better shape. We talked about unintentionally sending boost to the moon. Well, at some point you're going to intentionally send it to the moon. And if your intercooler is not up to par to handle the blowtorch that you're about to turn your turbo into, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to turn the boost way up, and you're not really going to gain any power, because as you get out of the efficiency range of your given turbo, as you crank the boost up, it literally turns into a blowtorch, a blow dryer. It starts heating up the air more and more and more, and if your intercooler is not up to par, all you're doing is asking for IATs that also are going to go to the moon. Like unintentional boost, you do not want IATs to go to the moon. You want them to be nice and slow. You want that to be a safe, easy thing, because if you have lower IATs, you can put more ignition timing in it. So not only do you have more air and more fuel to burn, you have more ignition timing to do it, so that way you can make, again, more power. And circling back to number 1, when we talked about turbo choice and you can get away with a cheaper one, well, it's inevitable that when you max that sucker out and all you're doing is cranking hot air into it, you're going to want to replace it with a bigger one or a more quality one. So what are you going to do? You going to shove more air through your same crappy intercooler? No, you have to have, or you should have, or it should be a good idea to get yourself a quality intercooler that will outlast however much air you intend to shove through it down the road. So now you've upgraded to this bigger, fancier, American-made turbo that's going to, crank out double the power you were just expecting. Well, you have to expect your intercooler to be able to support that as well. So go ahead and start out with a good one, because it will reap you benefits now and down the road. So the fourth piece, just a blow-off valve. I think you can do away with a cheap one there. Worst thing that happens, you have a little compressor surge, not the end of the world. But in most cases, people argue about this left and right. I'm not here to do that. Just go ahead and get yourself a blow-off valve put on there. Put the damn thing on there and let the exhaust or the boost out when you're supposed to. Don't overthink it. But finally, we're here to the problem that the internet has with boost. I don't want you guys to exit this video before we finish talking about this. But the internet has a serious problem with boost, and that's talking about how many pounds someone is or isn't running. The amount of boost that I'm running, you're running, he's running, she's running, doesn't matter.
The amount of boost that I'm running, you're running, he's running, she's running, doesn't matter.
The pounds of boost does not matter. Completely arbitrary number. And of course I'm going to get the hiccups while I'm driving, trying to make this damn video for you guys. But anyway, pound of boost is arbitrary. 20 pounds is not 20 pounds. Now, cranking your setup from 10 to 20 pounds does matter. The difference in boost there does matter. But just because I make 20 pounds, just because he makes 20 pounds, doesn't mean that you should make 20 pounds. Now, just because someone uses 40 pounds doesn't mean that they make more power than you at 15 pounds, because it's all about the volume of air. If you have a 900 cubic inch motor, then 40 pounds of boost is going to be a drastic difference than 40 pounds of boost through a 1.8 liter motor. It's a different thing, because you're consuming a different volume of air. For example, the key way to look at this is that, like I said, if you have a small Honda engine, a 4G63, something like that, and you cram 40-60 pounds through it, those guys might make 700-800 pounds, or 700-800 horse. Okay, it's very respectful. But if you take that same turbo and put it on my motor and try to make 40-50 pounds through it, won't do it. Not only will it not make the same amount of boost, but it will run out of power long before that. It will become that blowtorch that we talked about long before that. So that right there is one example of boost not being equivalent. The other side of that is that if you have a Cummins, like let's just say you have a Cummins and you have a S485, you have an 85 millimeter 132 T6 housing turbo. You put it on there and you make it run at like 40 pounds of boost. That's what you shove through that Cummins head. Well, if I shove 40 pounds of boost through my motor, I'm going to make a little bit more power than that Cummins is at the same 40 pounds of boost. And that's because the Cummins, the head on those things do not flow. They're like literally like full of right angles and sharp edges. They are not great, in terms of the CFM. So they require you to really pack the air in there in order to make the same amount of power that a smaller, more efficiently flowing head can make at lower boost. So that's why boost is arbitrary. The internet needs to stop talking about strictly just how much boost someone is or isn't running. Again, that does not mean that you can just arbitrarily turn your boost controller from 10 pounds to 20 pounds to 30 pounds and not expect it to have, results. I'm just telling you that between setups, the number of boost, the boost number, the number of pounds someone is running is largely arbitrary, and we need to stop talking about it that way, because 28 pounds on my setup doesn't equal 28 pounds on yours. Ignition timing, all of these, what fuel you're running, all of these things matter far more than the amount of boost that you're actually pushing into the engine. So, that was a tough one. That was a long one. I tried to get through this one really quick. It always ends up rambling, but that's okay. There's meat in here that those of you who will stick out the videos will watch, that you'll get something out of it. There's truly value in these messages if you'll stick around to the 10-15 minutes of talk that's taken me 5 years to acquire. It's taken me thousands of passes at the drag strip to understand these things, talking to thousands of people on the internet to conceptualize these things. It's there is a lot to be learned in short periods here that have otherwise taken some of us long periods. Now, if you'll notice, I typically do these Diggin episodes in Clifford. I like to, do the street truck thing while I'm talking about street truck things. But when we had the truck up on the lift, I noticed I had a leak around the pump and the converter and the trans. It was leaking a little bit. Not a big deal, but not something I really want to get out driving around on. So I went ahead and recorded this one early on my way home. I'm in Mr. Bill. And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned a little something. And as always, keep digging, dive in and work on your projects. I'm Diggin Z71. We will see you later.